All right, want to dive into, we've been talking a lot about the return of the NBA, and if you're just waking up with us, for everybody out there, it's an exciting time, I think, in general in the world of sports, because the NBA debuted last night. We have Major League Baseball back and rolling. I know they've had some issues with the Marlins and with the Phillies, and there have been a variety of different things that haven't gone perfectly, but there have been a lot of games played already. They've been going for over a week now, and they're starting to hit sort of their stride a little bit, let's say. NBA last night, we got into all the politics and everything else in hour one, and I think we had a big discussion about that. But there's still a little bit of uncertainty about some sports. I'm going to get into that in a sec. But tomorrow the NHL is back, and so there are a ton of games that we're about to have starting tomorrow. So you're going to be able to watch your favorite NBA, your favorite Major League Baseball team, and your favorite NHL team, assuming everything continues to go well, pretty much for all of August and for much of September, by and large, nightly games all the way up until mid-October for those two sports. Major League Baseball, same way. We've literally never found ourselves, as we are about to enter into August, with this much sports to be able to watch. What are the sports that we don't know about? It feels pretty good about the NFL. Training camp starting to get back to normalcy. And I feel like we've been talking about this for weeks, but the sport that is still a little bit unclear, I would say, is college football. And in particular, as it pertains to college football, the SEC came out yesterday afternoon and said they were going to play a 10-game SEC season, not play any out-of-conference game. Following in the footsteps of the Big Ten and the Pac-12, the SEC now is going to play 10 conference games. And this is actually, I think, for most SEC fans, super exciting, because the SEC has so many interesting and unique rivalry games that they've had to give up as they've expanded to 12 teams and as they've expanded to 14 teams. And if you're a college football fan, if depending on how the SEC structures this expansion to 10 games, I think you have to be kind of excited. I also think if you're a team that was hoping to win a national championship, and I would put the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Floridas, the LSUs, maybe the Auburns, whoever they are, up at the top of that list, and it's going to get a lot harder, because 10 SEC games is way tougher to me than 8 in-conference games, one typical Big Five conference opponent, and then 3 games that it's really hard to lose. A lot of SEC teams basically start with 4 wins, especially the weaker teams. And now you've got a team like Arkansas, let's say, that might legitimately go 0-10 in the SEC this year, or 1-9, or whatever the numbers might be. And how exactly they decide to set up this schedule is going to be pretty fascinating to see. I can't even imagine what the horse trading is going to look like, because you know what 8 of the games are. But what's the horse trading that's going to look like to get the next 2 games? My expectation was that to avoid all the horse trading, they would just go ahead and take the next 2 years of rotating opponents. But if they don't do that, there is a lot of moving parts associated with this SEC decision. But also, this is a college football season the likes of which we're never going to have seen before. For years, I am 41. For as long as I can remember being a college football fan, which is my whole life, everybody has said, hey, will Notre Dame ever join a conference? All it took was for the coronavirus to happen, and the fact that Notre Dame hadn't been in a conference since 1887 comes roaring back. And there is so much uncertainty right now about when teams are going to start playing, because the SEC right now is not going to start until late September. So in talking to a lot of different people around this story, one of the big fears on college campuses right now is that as soon as the kids get back on college campuses, there's going to be a massive increase in overall coronavirus infections. Most of those infections are not going to in any way be harmful to young kids, because if you're younger than 24, you're under more danger of death from the flu and the seasonal flu and pneumonia. But to what extent can they keep those viruses just in the young people? If they could, it would run through the young people pretty fast, the college kids, and then it would move on, and there would be some form of herd immunity, hopefully, in many of these different locations. But the challenge is, how are you going to keep college football players from being surrounded by all of the regular college kids? Because if you remember being on a college campus, you probably did what I did. You went where the pretty girls were. And if you were a pretty girl, you went where the other guys went. You basically are always in close contact with each other. And the athletes are the same as the regular students. So I don't know how, if an outbreak happens among the regular student body, you're going to be able to completely avoid it from the athletes, which is why I've said I actually think there's something to be said with starting the season earlier as opposed to later, because if you start the season earlier, you have more bye weeks built in so that if major issues arise, then you don't have to worry about them as much. But let's keep in mind this SEC decision is pretty seismic for a bunch of different reasons, one of which is they've bumped the SEC title game all the way back now until mid to late December. The SEC title game now is scheduled to be played on December 19th, which is 6 days before Christmas, but also not very far in advance of when the first round of the college football playoff would be played. But in a larger context, it also throws into question what I think is going to end up happening clearly here. There's not going to be a bowl season. People can debate exactly what college football is going to look like, and I believe they're going to find a way to play college football. But I don't think there's any doubt at all, if you look at the way the bowl season is set up, if the SEC is bumping their season all the way back, I think it's highly unlikely that the bowl games are played at all. Could I be wrong? Sure. But it doesn't seem very likely to me, with the way that you look at this scenario, that it's going to be very likely that you will be able to play any bowl games at all. Now, that's a later SEC championship game by far, 2 weeks later than it usually would be. But the start of the SEC season is not happening until September 26th, which is 3 weeks later than you would anticipate it being. And so there are a couple of bye weeks built in to the SEC season in the event that they have major issues that could be there. And then they also have another couple of bye weeks where they could push back and be able to play the SEC title game. But they haven't released the full schedule yet, so we won't know exactly what that looks like for a while. But you could theoretically have, although I don't think it's going to happen, Oklahoma right now is scheduled to play the first college football game, one of the first college football games of the season right now on August 29th. So you could have Oklahoma theoretically playing a college football game on August 29th and the SEC not starting their season until 4 weeks after Oklahoma does. And right now the SEC is starting later than every other conference in college football. Why would they do that? Partly, I think this is just to try to buy themselves as much time as possible. But also, I think the idea is with college football that you can use the NFL as a little bit of a guinea pig. So the NFL is going to come back on September 10th. Instead of being in front of the NFL, I think a lot of college teams are thinking, wait, let's see how it goes for the NFL, and then let's move back. And let's also be honest. If the SEC isn't scheduled to start until September 26th, if the other conferences try to start and it just turns into a disaster and they don't end up being able to play, then the SEC can just say, well, nobody was able to play. I don't think we're going to go either. So I don't know how this is all going to work out. I think if your only goal was to play college football, the easy solution to me is just to quarantine the athletes, right? Tell the athletes, hey, in order to play football, you're going to need to be in a dorm on campus. We're going to restrict entry and exit, and we're going to make sure that we create our own little campus bubble right by the practice facility, and the only people that are allowed in are people affiliated with the football team. Now, the challenge with that, obviously, is these are regular college kids, and how well are they going to stay committed to the bubble, and is that allowable in any way compared to a pro team that could theoretically do it? I don't know all the answers here, but I think at this point in time, if you look at the NBA, if you look at the NHL, if you look at Major League Baseball, the only sport that is now under siege is college football. And what I think is fascinating about that is every other sport has come back, which I believe means that college football will eventually be able to find a way to get back. What exactly that will look like, it is going to be really, really interesting. But there are still so many different moving parts. There's going to be a lot of drama about what conference decisions are made, who's going to play, who's not going to play. What I would say in general here is the challenge, I believe it's fall or bust, right? And I've been saying that to you guys for a long time. College football is either going to be played in the fall or it's not, right? The idea of playing in the spring doesn't really make very much sense. And so there are a lot of decisions to be made, but it is still messy. I mean, we don't know exactly what the Big Ten schedule looks like. We don't know exactly what the SEC schedule looks like. We don't know what the Big 12 looks like. The Pac-12 still has to make decisions. The ACC has told us who's going to play, but they haven't given us a definitive idea of how exactly everything will be structured. I don't remember anything like this ever existing before, and I hope, frankly, in my life we never have any situation like this again. And that is, there's no other way to talk about it. I mean, this is a situation that is truly without precedent. And on top of the situation truly being without precedent, I love to gamble. And you guys know I love to gamble. It's one of my favorite things to do in relation to sports. And coming up next, we're going to talk with Todd Furman, at Todd Furman on Twitter, to see what he has to say about trying to make sense of the NBA, the NHL, the Major League Baseball, all of these different sports. How do you gamble on them when there are no crowds present, when you don't know about the overall health status of so many different players? It's one of the most fascinating and difficult scenarios that's ever existed for any gambler anywhere.